under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tri-Creek School Corporation of students, staff, and community endeavors to be
a recognized leader for high achievement and exceptional growth,
innovative and equitable approaches built upon strong community pride,
and provide all students with well-rounded educational experiences to prepare for future successes.
Engaged to learn, equipped to achieve,
and empowered to succeed.
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening? Right. Public participation related to agenda items, we have none this evening. So we will move on to D, operating referendum.
So yeah, tonight we have expert Sean here from Baker Tilly, and he is here to give us an overview of the ballot question, why the question reads the way that it does, what it really means, and other useful information. So we present to you Mr. Sean McGill.
I'll get it up on the screen in just a second. Jay, what's the,
MSLGI.
I've got TV, right? Oh, look at that.
All right. Thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to present to you the information both about the operating referendum, the analysis that went into arriving at the proposed operating referendum rate, as well as certain particular detailed information related to the ballot question and anticipated impact for individual taxpayers. So I will start by going over the actual and projected financial analysis that served as a basis for determining the, what's the word I'm looking for? Not feasibility, but determining whether or not the sufficiency is what I'm looking for. Determining the sufficiency of the proposed operating referendum tax rate of 20.5 cents. So I will start by tonight's agenda, we will briefly overview the assumptions that went into the financial model. We will overview the baseline financial projection. Baseline you can read as business as usual without the operating referendum. Then we'll take a look at the same scenario with the addition of the operating referendum. After that, we'll take a look at the ballot question and then the impact to taxpayers. So we'll start by going over the assumptions. First, we'll cover net assessed valuation. So we contracted a think tank in Indianapolis named Policy Analytics for assessed value assumptions. Policy Analytics maintains a parcel level database wherein they can run statistical analysis and trend analysis to try and accurately project out not only net assessed valuations, but also circuit breaker tax credits, as well as the tax rates of other overlapping units that flow into circuit breaker. So based upon Policy Analytics projections, we've assumed net assessed value growth of 4.1%. That is relatively high compared to some of the other districts that I work with, but I do think it is an accurate and reasonable reflection of the recent growth that's going on in the community and what's anticipated to continue to occur. As we're talking about an operating referendum, referendum tax rates, both operating and capital, benefit from the addition of TIF assessed valuation. So there are about $20 million worth of TIF assessed valuation in Tri-Creek School Corporation. Typically, the school corporation does not receive property tax revenue from these TIF districts. Those dollars are cycled back into the district in which they're in. However, should the operating referendum be successful, the operating referendum tax rate would be applied to those TIF districts, and you would see that revenue start coming in. Next, we'll take a look at certified property tax levies. Really what we're talking about here is the operations tax rate and the operations tax levy. The school corporation's 2 property tax rates that are on the books right now are for debt service and one for operations. Operations is pretty much everything that's not instructional and teacher salary related. So Indiana school corporations are regulated on how much they can increase that operating levy year over year. The factor by which they can increase is called the maximum levy growth quotient. So regardless of what kind of AV growth you've seen locally, you are mandated to grow your maximum levy growth quotient by the maximum amount that applies to all school districts in Indiana. In 2023, that amount was 5%. So in 2023, you also saw assessed value growth of about 20%. So which means that operations tax rate actually went down, even though the school corporation was able to collect approximately $375,000 of additional revenue. So for 2024 through 2026, we've assumed the school corporation would qualify for an alternative maximum levy growth quotient due to substantial assessed value growth recently. And those growth quotients range from 8% to 8.3%. And then thereafter, we're assuming more normal growth, so an average maximum levy growth quotient of approximately 4.8%. Taking a look at circuit breaker tax credits, based upon recent AV growth, Policy Analytics has projected those to go down. Whether or not that will be the case, we'll find out shortly when the DLGF releases actual 2023 circuit breaker numbers. Due to significant AV growth, the anticipation would have been that a lot of the district tax rates would have dropped. However, particularly in Cedar Lake, that was definitely not the case. Higher tax rates means higher circuit breaker losses. So we have accounted for a little bit of that contingency within our cash flow projections. But from the circuit breaker standpoint, we're assuming a loss equivalent to about 7.5% of the projected operations levies. Miscellaneous revenues, property tax funds typically receive what we refer to as miscellaneous revenues, but really the levy is supplemented by license excise tax, financial institutions tax, and commercial vehicle excise tax. And so we've assumed that all property tax funds would continue to receive those in the amount which they've historically been receiving, which is just under 5%. State tuition support. This is commonly referred to as the school funding formula, which is the amount of revenue the school corporation brings in its education fund, which is that instructional and teacher salary related fund. That revenue is determined by the state's school funding formula, tuition support funding formula, and is largely dependent upon average daily membership or your enrollment. So two of the largest categories, I would say, are basic grant and complexity. And those two are largely driven by per pupil funding amounts. So for fiscal year 2023, we've assumed what the actual funding amounts are going to be, and then thereafter we've assumed annual growth to those funding amounts of 2%. In addition to that, we've assumed enrollment growth of 1.2%. So there is considerable revenue growth built into our modeled education fund. You may notice that later, the projected revenues for the operating referendum are a little bit less than the proposed revenue spending plan, and that is where some of these variances and differences are made up. With regards to other receipts, we've modeled those pretty consistently with what has historically been receipted. Those are things like summer school revenue, student and adult fees, extracurricular accounts, and other unrestricted grants and aid. Moving on, we'll take a look on the disbursement side. For 2023 and 2031, our projected expenditures and our cash flows. We've assumed annual increases to teacher compensation and benefits, as well as annual increases to all other salaries and benefits. We've assumed an annual inflationary factor to operating disbursements outside of salary and benefits. And then we've also assumed increased expenditures being incurred by the Education and Operations Fund as they begin to incur the expenditures that are currently being funded by what's commonly referred to as ESSER, which is the Emergency Secondary School Relief, the federal dollars that school corporations received in connection with the COVID-19 pandemic. Those dollars, the allocation that the school has available to it, requires those funds to be expended by September 2024, or at least allocated to be expended by 2024. So when we start looking at graphs, you may notice a jump in the expenditures occurring in 24 and 25. That's really what that is rolling off of. Additionally, we've assumed that the teaching and security program would come on the books beginning in 2024. And included in that is $3 million reserved for recruitment and retention of staff, a little over $100,000 for grant-funded aides, approximately $84,000 for grant-funded counselors, $310,600 for grant-funded teachers, $182,000 for grant-funded deans, $33,500 for grant-funded health aides, $52,000 for safety, $472,000 for additional certified staff to keep class size at a reduced amount, instructional coaches to the tune of $435,000, technology integration specialist at just under $220,000, and then $137,000 for safety behavior specialists, $116,000 for safety student resource officers, and a little under $93,000 for maintenance and ground personnel, to a tune of $5,239,396. So those expenditures are built into where they would be incurred in the Education and Operations Fund, or allocated to the operating referendum when we've assumed that would come on the books. So when you look at the baseline model, there's not going to be an operating referendum fund, but those expenditures are still built into that analysis, which we'll take a look at now. So again, baseline financial projection simply means the assumptions without the addition of the operating referendum. And really what we see here, and this is very common across the state, especially as I'm sure you're all aware of inflation recently, construction costs, material costs, supply chain delays. Really it's just adding costs across the books, and really what we're seeing is annual receipt growth or revenue growth of approximately 3.5%, while over the same period expenditures are projected to grow 4.7%. So as you can imagine, this budgetary imbalance leads to a depletion of the cash balance, and that's what we'll take a look at next. So as you can see, this depletion of cash balances has already started. In 2019, the school corporation ended the calendar year with about $8.3 million of cash spread across the education operations and rainy day funds. On December 31st, 2022, that amount was just below $5.3 million, or approximately 15% of annual expenditures. That 15% threshold is really a very common industry standard, and typically represents either 1 month payroll or 1 month expenditures, but really it's meant to provide a little bit of cushion and safety net should something happen downstate and a property tax distribution would be delayed. So school corporations typically receive the bulk of their money in June and in December. That's when property taxes are distributed. So for instance, a lot of debt service payments are due at the beginning of January. So you can imagine how much of a strain a month delay in collection of revenue would put on the school corporation. That's why it's always important to have a cash balance. But moving into the projected years, as the revenue and expenditures tend to widen, what we're seeing is an average annual deficit of about $3.4 million. So, in looking at the operating referendum, that was our primary consideration, was bridging that gap of that deficit. So the proposed operating referendum tax rate is 20.5 cents. Should that go into effect in 2024, based upon our assessed value assumptions, we estimate that would the tax levy portion of that would bring in about $3.75 million in 2024. And then as assessed valuation grows over the course of 8 years, that we project the average revenue received by the operating referendum fund, and this would be inclusive of the miscellaneous revenue that I mentioned previously, would grow to approximately $4.58 million. That estimated December 31st, 2031 cash balance spread across the operating funds is approximately $8.15 million, which represents an 18% operating balance. So within that 15 to 20%, obviously not at the bare minimum of 15, but still certainly reasonable and reflective of sound financial management. And that checks all the boxes for what the credit rating agencies are looking for. So any time the school corporation would look to borrow money, it would keep that cost of borrowing relatively low. In addition to that, we're projecting an addition of approximately $1.6 million to the rainy day fund. The current balance is $1,681,000. And we would project that to almost double over the course of 8 years. And as we look at the same chart that we looked at before, now we have the addition of the operating referendum. We're seeing average receipt growth projected to be 4.9%, and those average expenditures are still the same at 4.7% growth. What that translates to, from a cash balance perspective, is an average annual surplus of approximately $375,000. And most of that surplus we've modeled would be moved to the rainy day fund. So you see this cash balance significantly higher than the 15% threshold, and that's because it's inclusive of the $3.6 million of rainy day funds as well. So now we'll take a look at the ballot question. This is what voters will see in the ballot booth in May. So I'll read the ballot question. It says, shall the Tri-Creek School Corporation increase property taxes paid to the school corporation by homeowners and businesses for the 8 years immediately following the holding of the referendum for the purpose of funding the Tri-Creek School Corporation teaching and safety program that will invest in teachers, aides, staff, and safety personnel? If this public question is approved by voters, the average property tax paid to the school corporation per year on a residence would increase 25.5%, and the average property tax paid to the school corporation per year on a business property would increase 24.5%. The Tri-Creek School Corporation has not previously held a property tax referendum. So, when I look at this question, and especially if I had never seen it before, I'm going to think my property taxes are going to go up by 25.5%. While that 25.5% is mathematically correct based upon the state prescribed formula, it is not reflective of the anticipated impact to your property tax rates. And I will demonstrate that on the following slide. So those percentages were calculated by me. And I did not write this calculation. This calculation is new and it's required. Those percentages are required to be in the question. And the calculation of the percentages is mandated by Indiana state law. And it's a very specific step-by-step process to to which there's really a whole lot of room for interpretation, or what I like to refer to as wiggle room. Furthermore, all of the calculations, all of the numbers that serve as the basis for the calculation have to be certified and approved by the Lake County Auditor, which they have done. So I'll start by walking through the calculation. Really what you're seeing here in this column would be a 2022 tax bill for the average value homestead. So in 2022, the average value homestead, according to the Lake County Auditor's Office, was $221,000. Because this is a homestead property, we're able to assume that this gross assessed valuation is reduced for property tax purposes by the standard homestead deduction and the supplemental homestead deduction. These are two deductions that all homesteads should receive. We do not assume the mortgage deduction in this calculation. It's not written in the law. So that $221,000 property, after applying $106,000 of deductions, equals approximately $114,000. And that is the net assessed valuation. The net assessed valuation is the value upon which taxes are levied. So that's the value that we're going to be multiplying by our tax rate and dividing by 100, as property taxes in Indiana are applied per $100 of net assessed valuation, not on the market value or the gross assessed valuation. So we'll take a look at the tax rate. And Tri-Creek School Corporation serves 8 different taxing districts, and each one of those taxing districts has its own unique total district tax rate that's comprised of the school corporation's tax rate, the library, whether you're in Cedar Lake, it would be the town of Cedar Lake, you could have the town of Schneider, you could have the town of Lowell, or you could not have a town and benefit from a lower district tax rate, but not, you'd be living in an unincorporated area. There's also a township tax rates that fall into there, as well as a special taxing district for Lake County Solid Waste Management. But that's beside the point. Really, taxpayers in the district are paying total tax rates ranging from below $2 to above $3. But we have to use an average here. So that average in 2022 was $2.36.48. So when we do the math, we get a gross property tax liability of $2,706.38. From that, we subtract property tax replacement credits, which you receive in relation to the local income tax in Lake County. Those property tax replacement credits are applied to all property, whether it's a homestead or it's subject to the 2% or 3% circuit breaker tax cap. It's the same approximately 15% reduction. After that fact, we have to take a look at circuit breaker. So homesteads in Indiana are subject to a 1% circuit breaker tax cap, which means that with the exception of referendum, homesteads cannot pay a tax bill that's in excess of 1% of the market value of their home. So that $85.80 is the required circuit breaker tax credits to bring this tax bill down to 1% of the gross assessed valuation. So you have a gross assessed valuation or a market value of your property at $221,000, and you have a net property tax liability or a tax bill of $2,210. That's 1%. So we've done the total tax bill portion. Now we have to figure out the portion that Tri-Creek Schools was responsible for. And keep in mind, these are all averages. So in 2022, Tri-Creek's total school tax rate was 98.43 cents. What that means, after we calculate the gross property tax liability and then allocate the property tax replacement credits and circuit breaker tax credits accordingly based upon, or I should say proportionally, based upon tax rate, we see that the average value homestead, based upon this calculation, paid Tri-Creek Schools $920.19. So less than half of the total tax bill went to the school corporation. Then the calculation asks, well, had the operating referendum been in place in 2022, how much more revenue would have gone to Tri-Creek Schools? And so we do the same calculation with the tax rate. We multiply the proposed operating referendum rate by the net assessed valuation and divide by 100, and we get $234.61. The calculation then says, okay, divide that with the money that you already paid to the school corporation. So $234.61 divided by $920.19 equals 25.5%. So while it is true that had the operating referendum been on the books in 2022, Tri-Creek Schools would have received 25.5% more revenue on an average basis from homesteads. But this $920 is not the total tax bill. That is. So when we divide the same $234.61 by the $2,200, we get 10.6%. And that is a much more accurate reflection of what taxpayers might anticipate if they're at their circuit breaker tax cap. Again, that's one of the problems with working with averages, especially across 8 taxing districts, especially considering the disparity in total tax rates from districts that fall in Cedar Lake to those that are unincorporated. The next slide is the exact same thing. It's just the calculation for businesses. I really won't go into too much detail because it's almost identical, but I'll point out the differences. Business properties are subject to the 3% circuit breaker tax cap. So even at that same $2.36 tax rate, the average business is not at the circuit breaker tax cap, so there's no reduction there. And then businesses obviously don't receive homestead deductions, so their gross assessed valuation is equal to the net assessed valuation. I know $45,000 looks low for a business. That's what we got from the auditor. But again, in this instance, Tri-Creek Schools received $380. The operating referendum would have generated another 93. You do the math, that's 24.5% more revenue to the school corporation, but on a total tax basis, it represents 10.2% more. So in review, these calculations are made according to a state-prescribed formula. The formula requires the use of the average assessed valuation of a homestead and a business property in the school corporation's district as certified by the Lake County Auditor. The formula requires the use of average district tax rates. Tri-Creek School Corporation serves 8 different taxing districts, each with their own unique district tax rate, which in 2023 ranged from $1.90 to $3.16. We're also calculating the average property taxes that will be paid to the school corporation for the operating referendum as a percentage of the revenue that they would have already received. No calculation, aside from the one that I just showed you, which isn't required, is made for the anticipated impact on total tax bills, and the calculation does not account for the current tax rate or planned reductions to the debt service tax rate in 2024, which we'll take a look at right now. So now we'll talk specifically about the impact to taxpayers and how you might be able to estimate the impact of the proposed operating referendum on your tax bills should it be successful. This chart shows the historical total school tax rates of Tri-Creek Schools since 2019, so over the past 4 years. And then we have the 2024 projected rate as our fifth. So as you can see, in 2024, the school corporation is anticipated to reduce its debt service tax rate such that its total tax rate, not including the operating referendum, equals 93 cents. Adding the 20.5 cent operating referendum onto that brings us to a total school tax rate of $1.13.5, which equals an 8-cent increase from what the school corporation's total tax rate is today. I'll remind you that reductions to the non-exempt tax rate, non-referendum rates, are subject to circuit breaker tax credits. So depending upon where you are in relation to your circuit breaker tax cap, you may feel the reduction to the debt service tax rate, and you may not. If you're in a district, say in Cedar Lake, where you are already at your tax cap, your tax bill is already being reduced. Unfortunately, the amount by which the debt service tax rate is projected to be reduced is not projected to drop you below your tax cap. So you will still pay the same 1% of your homestead property value. The operating referendum levy, of course, would be on top of that. So when we start breaking out the anticipated tax impact by taxing district, and we've increased, we knew assessments grew in 2023, so we updated our average homestead value, which is now just under $260,000. What we're seeing here is based on a $260,000 home, districts which are not at their tax cap, West Creek Township, Eagle Creek Township, Cedar Creek Township, are projected to have an annual impact of right around $100, which equals about a 4.5% increase above what's being paid today. Those districts in Lowell, Schneider, and Cedar Lake that are at their property tax cap, the addition of the operating referendum would be about $280 more on their tax bill, which equals about 10.8%. When we take a look at businesses, very much the same. As businesses are subject to the 3% property tax cap, not many of them, if any of them, are currently at that tax cap, so they will all feel the reduction to the debt service tax rate, which limits the net impact of the operating referendum. So here we're seeing impacts ranging from 3.7% in Schneider up to 6.1% in West Creek Township.
What's the difference between the West Creek Township and the Lowell West Creek?
One's incorporated.
Okay,
So like Indian Heights is considered West Creek, but it's incorporated with Lowell.
I got it. The town proper.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
All right, the next slide I'll show, and I believe this is my last slide, yes, is for agricultural land. I know there's a lot of farmland around here, and that's, farmers make their dollars by acreage. So it's important that they understand the impact of the proposed operating referendum on their property. So per acre, we estimate that, and farmland is subject to a 2% property tax cap, so and it's also based upon a base rate assessment value. So in 2023, or for assessment year 23 rather, that base rate assessed value is $1,900 per acre. And then at tax time, they're able to apply what's called productivity factors to that based upon the property, what they grew, how they grew it, some other factors as well. But if we just take a look at the base rate, we're anticipating an estimated annual impact of $3.90 per acre. Per 100 acres, that equals about $32.50 per month. Lastly, that concludes my slides, but I would like to encourage anyone who would like to estimate the impact of the proposed operating referendum on their property tax bills to visit the school corporation's website, click on the referendum tab, and then click on the investment calculator and open that up. And the investment calculator has 3 fields which tie exactly to your tax bill. The first 3 lines on your tax bill will be property subject to 1% circuit breaker, 2% circuit breaker, 3% circuit breaker. So you'll input those and you'll select which taxing district you live in, and that will provide you with the most accurate estimate that I can come up with for the impact of the referendum on your property taxes. It assumes Tri-Creek reduces its tax rate to 93 cents. It assumes the addition of the 20.5-cent operating referendum. It takes into account circuit breaker tax credits. It has updated property tax replacement credits. It allows you to select whether or not you want to apply the mortgage deduction in 2023. It assumes all the tax rates that aren't Tri-Creeks stay at their current levels. So as you can see here, in Cedar Creek Taxing District, a $257,000 market value property that received the mortgage deduction in 2023 is estimated to see a $150 increase per year, or approximately $12.50 per month, which represents a 6.7% increase. So I know a lot of percentages were thrown around this evening. Really the main theme is that I think the highest one we saw was 10.8%, which is less than half of the 25.5% included in the question. And when we take a look at individual estimates for average value properties, about 10.8% is the highest you're going to see. And then as you add value to that, or perhaps add different properties that are subject to the 2% or 3% cap, you will see differences, but nothing close to 25.5%. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Do you have any cheat sheets for the quiz we're getting ready to take?
I like this new calendar or calculator. I think you guys did a great job updating that. It helps a lot, especially with the percentage at the bottom.
It was the superintendent's idea.
Yeah, that's great.
It was a very thorough
Teamwork.
presentation, thank you.
Yes.
Hopefully not too thorough. I think everyone's still awake.
We do receive some questions via social media. One comment was, wow, we just got our tax bill. The assessed value went up. Our tax bill went up. The school corporation should be rolling in money. What's your response to that?
My response is I agree it should, but the laws in Indiana don't provide for that. The only way for a school corporation to capture dollars for operations, I should say.
Which is salary and benefits.
Yeah,
Right.
It's salary, benefits, it's transportation, it's maintenance around the buildings, it's grounds work, it's athletics, it's your operations fund. Regardless of how much assessed value grows, the school corporation can only increase the amount of revenue they bring in by the state mandated maximum levy growth quotient, which in 2023 was 5%. 5% equals $370,000. Over the same time period, inflation, CPI, Consumer Price Index, was 7.5%. So on a real basis, I deal with interest rates all day. So on a real basis, the school corporation has less purchasing power, less dollars available to them, taking into account inflation, than they did the year prior. So the only way for a school corporation to capture assessed value growth in the form of dollars available for operations is through an operating revenue.
I think that's important to repeat. We basically are only capturing $375,000 of this spring's tax bill.
That's correct.
And when you put that side by side of inflation versus how much we're ahead, it's not.
Right. You can point back to the cash chart, and it's not just this past year. Since 2019, there's been a deficit.
What What are some other questions that we've heard, but we don't really know how to articulate? We answered the one, our tax bill's going up 25%. The answer is no. Generally speaking, most people will see a 4% to 11% increase on the school portion of the tax bill.
Correct.
Okay.
I got a question that was, well, if I vote yes, that means that my tax cap goes away forever and my taxes can just go up and up and up.
That's simply not true. The tax cap is still in effect, and for any tax rate that is not a referendum tax rate, the calculation remains the same. Actually, the calculation of the tax bill, it remains the same. You take your operating referendum rate and just hold it off to the side. You calculate your tax bill as normal and apply circuit breaker tax credits as they're applicable. So for instance, if gross property tax liability coming from Cedar Lake's tax rates and everybody, those district tax rates, if that's high enough to warrant a reduction via circuit breaker tax credits, not accounting for the operating referendum, then yes, your tax bill will absolutely be reduced to 1% of the market value of your home, and then they will apply the operating referendum tax rate to your net assessed value and just put that money, that tax levy or liability on top of your tax bill.
I've got one. So we've got a lot of building going on here and lots of new homes going in. So doesn't that equal more money for the school district? Similar concept.
Similar concept. Again, assuming that those buildings aren't in TIF districts, what we can assume is that you will see assessed valuation increase. As previously explained with regards to the operating or operations levy and the maximum levy growth quotient, assessed value growth does not mean more revenue for the school corporation. All things else held equal, it means lower tax rates. But it does not mean the school corporation can increase their tax rate to keep pace with the assessed value growth. Hopefully, there's some kids going into those homes, and we'll see the increased enrollment, but those enrollment growth is included in our analysis. That's assumed. So if that enrollment growth doesn't come to fruition, then there may not be a $370,000 surplus. It may be more of break-even results.
The interesting thing I see in that too is that yes, when you have a new home and they're built, they move in, their tax money doesn't actually even hit the rolls for about 12 to 15 months.
Yeah.
So those kids may have enrolled as soon as they got here. They move in September, they've got their new home, the kids show up on the first day of school, everything's great, but the school district doesn't even see that hit their tax rolls until 12 to 15 months down the line, and then on top of it, they're capped. So you may never even see that money hit the school district to support those payments.
Does it work the opposite at the end when they leave the school district in September, October, November, and they've already paid, and they're gone, and you're not really charging them? So I mean, does it balance out?
Well, in ADM situation, yes, that.
Especially with
of course
the
it
count.
leads, yeah, with the count date, but on property tax, the property tax is gonna be paid by the current owner or the next one that comes in. Either way, new home builds that don't exist right now will not hit the tax rolls for another 12 to 15 months, yet you're educating that child
Yep.
during that time.
Help me understand this state mandated maximum growth levy.
Yeah.
Are you saying that, like, we have that X amount of dollars that's going to the school system on our tax bill?
Mhm.
Is that amount what is really going to the schools?
On your tax bill where it says school and it has it, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely 100%.
Okay,
What's not shown is if you are at your circuit breaker tax cap, those losses get allocated to the school corporation. So
that's falling more under the tax cap.
yeah.
Okay.
But to your point, yes, the revenue the portion of your tax bill that says it's going to the school is absolutely going to the school.
Okay.
But in terms of the maximum levy growth quotient, what can I answer there?
Well, so you said there's a 5% growth?
In
cap?
23, yeah, it's a rolling 5-year average calculation kept by the state based upon assessment and trending and probably some other stuff.
And that's reflective of what number? What is that? What is that referring
The
to?
operations levy.
Okay.
So then we multiply it by 1 plus 5%, or 100, so 105%, that means 2022 levy, or the 23 levy is 5% higher than what was levied in 2022.
It's part of my budget process when I go to write the budget. You do this calculation based on the growth quotient that they give us. 5% is incredible. We've been anywhere from 3 to 5%. This is the highest it's been in a while. And again, it's an average, and that's why it's been bumping up. There is legislation right now downstate that would cap that at no more than 3% right now too, that they're working through. So it could be detrimental if that gets capped. Because we have the opportunity, since we've had so much growth here in the area, to actually apply for like a waiver to bump that up to 8%. But if this legislation goes through downstate, we will be limited in what we can do. So it's increasing our levy for our operations fund, which covers our capital projects, transportation, and our bus replacement. So that budget cannot increase any more than that growth quotient. So you have to stay within that limit. So even though your inflation goes up 8% in your fuel, Mr. Becker can talk about how much more fuel costs this year than it has in the past. It could go up exponentially, but we are limited to only raise that budget 5% this year.
How much is the school bus going for these days?
School bus, they're on the.
They are on our thing.
Quite a lot compared to last year.
Well, the amount's not on there.
And so then for salary and benefits, the revenue that comes in for that is per pupil based on our state tuition. And that's just based on enrollment. And so if you need money above and beyond that, you have to go to a referendum.
And the 2 count really hurts.
Yeah, because right now, Dana can explain this better, there's legislation right now that most likely parents will not have to pay textbook rental fee. However, you hear in the news that it's going to be a record-breaking year for funding for schools across the state. That might end up being true for the state, but the estimate for Tri Creek is not true. And so Dana, based on the projection that we got from the Department of Ed, what are those figures looking like?
Legislative Services agencies released a House Republican run of what their formula looks like for the school funding formulas for the next 2 years for the biannual budget. It's not been passed yet. These are just initial runs. But in looking at the Tri Creek estimates, which is on the IGA site, Tri Creek will actually increase $403 per student here in the first year of the funding formula, and $175 in the second year of the formula. 403, 175 per student here in district. Along with that, there's been an announcement that we'd like to go with not charging parents at all for textbooks next year. That's a great thing for parents, because textbook fees can range anywhere from $150 up to over $400 per student if that student in high school might be taking an AP load, an AP course load, or even welding load, or some of those high dollar amount courses that we have over there. So that's, again, great for parents, especially if you have 1, 2 kids in there, in school. You won't have to pay for textbook fees next year. But there is no funding line actually allocated, no grant, no single anything extra going to school districts to offset that dollar amount. School districts won't be able to charge for student fees or charge for those textbook portion. So again, that $403 that we're getting next year and $175 the following year will have to be used to pay for textbook fees at that point. So in essence, it's not Not an increase at all.
It's basically no new money, and actually, it could end up being a deficit for us,
Yep.
depending on what the textbook
And
fee costs.
It's important to remember when you're reading record funding for Indiana school corporations, that the budget is set on, they said 2 years. So when they're talking about record increases, they're talking about approximately 4% per pupil funding to occur in fiscal year '24. The increase afterwards, that second year, is less than 1%.
So then you're talking 2.5%
Yeah.
over 2, yeah. So if you've got kids in the school, when you pair that, if that textbook rental, legislation passes, and you look at the average tax impact, actually our families with kids in schools will, even with the referendum, will be money ahead because they don't have to pay for textbook rental.
Yeah,
If that
especially
passes.
with more than one children.
So
child.
that's important for people to realize. You can still support the school, and if the textbook rental you don't have to pay for, you are still money ahead and you still support the school.
Any other questions, comments? Do you want to take?
Typically, we don't have interaction with the audience during the meeting. This is a very important issue. If it's a pleasure to the board, while our expert is here, I'd recommend that our expert be able to field the questions from the audience, if you're good with that.
I agree.
Okay.
Audience
Okay.
questions?
I was just wondering if this is all gonna be online, like I see he's recording it, is it gonna be all like, we can click on this presentation for like people that, like me, don't really understand all this, and like we can share with our friends, because there's a lot of falseness about this, so I feel like this presentation should be online.
Yeah,
is
it will be.
It is, you know what? Consider it done, it's right there. It's under information and resources tab.
And our board meetings get posted as well, so the actual.
The link to that will also be posted on the YouTube page with the video.
All right, I just don't think it's, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
My name is John Leader. I just have a question. So I got my tax bill, what we were talking about. So last year, we paid $1,450 for the tax for the school. This year went up to $1,800. So it says on my tax bill, I pay 10.88%. Now, if this passes, it doesn't go on top of that, it just goes with this referendum is, right? You see, so I got on my tax bill, I paid 10.88% to the schools.
To this,
Now, so if this referendum passes, what would my tax bill say? 25.5%?
no.
Will it go on top of the 10.88%?
So I'm struggling with the percentage because I don't know what your property is comprised of, whether it's 1%, 2%, or 3%. So are you at your circuit breaker tax cap?
No, I really
Do you live in Lowell, Schneider, or Cedar Creek?
No, I live in Lowell.
You
But
live in Lowell?
incorporated on Post Road.
Unincorporated?
Yeah, I think it's unincorporated.
Okay.
That would be Cedar Creek.
Yeah, I'm a mile and a half up from Route 2.
Okay.
And so I have 6.85 acres. So I'm just trying to figure out.
You're a
I'll tell you
neighbor of
what,
mine then, because I live
If
off
you
the whole
stay
thing.
after, we will walk you through the investment calculator on your specific property, and it will give you a precise estimate.
Oh, okay, that would be great.
Hang around for a while.
Okay, thank you.
We got some good news coming up, so.
Okay, that's great.
Any other, I'm sorry, this is your meeting.
It's weird when Kyle's not here. We don't know what to do. Any other questions this evening for our? No? All right.
All right, thanks for your time and attention. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
All right. right. Thank you again, Sean. Looks like we have Oak Hill Elementary coming up for their school spotlight this evening.
We are in the spotlight. I need my paper. If I don't have the notes, I go rogue. And that is not good for anyone. Good evening, I'm Brady Muha, I'm the principal of Oak Hill Elementary School. Thank you for having us here tonight. This is something I love talking about. Well, more than my kids. I like talking about my kids, but Oak Hill is my pride. And I'm here with my dream team. I have Mrs. Teresa Patrovito, our Dean of Students, and I have Mrs. Allison Bird, our Student Support Advisor. And I know it's really hard to follow a referendum conversation. So we are gonna do our best, and we are going to help you guys get into the mood with a little music video. This is a video that we made for our students for preparing for testing. So our entire staff and the students were involved in this. And I'm not going to go any further because it's getting late. But it is on our social media, so you are more than welcome to view it there. You could also learn the words and sing along. Now I don't know how to go to the next slide. We'll just keep playing it. Oh, thank you. Oh, see? This is why I have them with me. All right, so this slide that you are going to see here shows the breakdown of student enrollment as well as the number of staff that supports our students at Oak Hill. We have an enrollment of 557 students. That includes students from Hanover that attend our life skills program. What is not shown on this slide are the number of outside support staff that come in to assist our students. We have a visual impairment teacher, we have a NISEC behaviorist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, assistive technology teacher, as well as 2 behaviorists from Behavior Specialists of Indiana, which you will hear about later. This is the Graduates Prepared to Succeed dashboard. It's Indiana's new portal for stakeholders to not only see how their school is performing, but compared to other schools and districts within the state of Indiana. The current GPS dashboard shows our population of 545. Again, that is without our Hanover students being accounted for. Our true number of students being served in our building is 557. GPS is also showing our free and reduced percentage. These are students that receive free lunches, or reduced lunches, or even reduced textbook rental. It's showing it as 22.75%. That equates to approximately 123 students receiving free or reduced lunches. As of March 13th, our current free percentage is 30%, which equates to approximately 167 students receiving free lunches. Our reduced lunch is 4.32%, which is 24 students. That is a significant increase, and we believe that this is due to breakfast and lunches no longer being free as they were during COVID. I'm going to be sharing with you in alignment with our guiding principle of continuous improvement, our school improvement goals for this school year, and our progress toward meeting those goals. Our first school improvement goal that we set in the fall was to improve math I-Learn performance in grades 3 through 5 from 65% to 70%. This chart is showing Oak Hill's proficiency on math I-Learn for grades 3 through 5 in comparison to other districts. As you can see, Oak Hill's proficiency is on par with our district average and higher than all districts listed except Crown Point in terms of our proficiency in grades 3 through 5. This slide shows a bar graph with a breakdown of proficiency performance from 2019 to 2022. 2019 was pre-COVID. You can see from the graph that performance of students in grades 3 through 5 was higher prior to the pandemic. No state assessment was administered during the 2020 school year. In 2021, we had students learning virtually as well as in person, and we were at 68.8% proficient. The following year, when those virtual students returned to full-time in-person learning, as well as students returning from homeschool, in 2022, we were at 65.1% proficient. This is a decrease of 3.7 percentage points of students at or above proficiency on iLearn and ELA, or in math, I apologize. In 2022, we were coming into a year where we were beginning recovery due to COVID. This means a lot of focus and efforts were placed on meeting social emotional needs to ensure academic learning could follow. We also have to remember that we are tracking different cohorts year to year. So third grade to third grade is like comparing apples to oranges. 2022 has now become our new baseline for data, since that is the year recovery began due to COVID. We are excited to announce that winter NWEA is projecting us to not only meet but exceed our math goal at 71% passing. The trend is we do perform better than the NWEA prediction, so we are definitely going to keep our eye on that data. This line graph is comparing apples to apples. It is showing the percentage of students who met their individual growth target on iLearn and math. You can see from the line graph, our students in grades 4 and 5 are demonstrating that they are bouncing back from COVID. You can see last year, 54.3% of 4th and 5th graders met their growth targets. This is an increase from 29.8% in 2021, and it continues to be higher than the state growth percentile. Next, we're going to talk about our second school improvement goal, which is English language arts. Our goal for English language arts that we set forth in the fall was to improve ELA iLearn performance in grades 3 through 5 from 53.9% to 60%. This breakdown shows Oak Hill's proficiency performance on ELA iLearn last spring in comparison to nearby districts. As shown on the chart, Oak Hill was again on par with our district performance. We were 1.3 percentage points lower than the district average. Our performance for ELA was also higher than Lake Central, Hanover, Highland, and Maryville schools. We were 12.7 percentage points higher than the state average. This slide, again, shows a breakdown of proficiency performance from 2019 to 2022 in ELA. As a reminder from our math slide, 2019 was pre-COVID. You can see from the graph that performance of students in grades 3 through 5 was higher prior to the pandemic. No state assessment was administered during the 2020 school year, and in 2021 we had those students who were learning virtually. The following year, when those virtual students returned, we were at 53.9% in 2022. This is a decrease of 0.9 of a percentage point of students at or above proficiency. In 2022, again, coming into that recovery year from COVID, and a lot of that focus and efforts that we did was all based on social emotional learning, so we can get to the academics. Using our NWEA winter scores, we are predicted to perform the same on ELA iLearn as we did last year. The good news is we have tracked our NWEA trends over the past 2 years, and we typically perform higher on iLearn than NWEA predicts by 2 to 5 percentage points. So again, it's important to understand that this one group of students is separate from another group of students. It's apples and oranges, and that's going to take us to the next slide, which is our growth. This line graph is comparing our apples to apples. It's showing the percentage of students who met their individual growth target on iLearn and ELA. As you can see from the line graph, Our students in grades 4 and 5 are demonstrating, again, a significant bouncing back from COVID in terms of meeting their individual growth targets. Last year, 59.8% of 4th and 5th graders met their growth targets. That's an increase of 25 percentage points, it was 34% in 2021. And it continues to be higher than the state growth percentile. The key takeaway should be that even though the proficiency hasn't increased, growth is taking off. This shows that the strategies we have put in place are working, which we're going to discuss in the next slides. So I've shared our goals for math and ELA for this school year, but I want to touch on the strategies that are being implemented to help us meet our goals. Our first school improvement strategy was to implement professional learning communities. This was a shift from data team meetings that we used to hold. How is it different? In the past, our data teams took place during the school day in isolated grade level meetings. As a school leader, there were often times I couldn't make it to the meetings when scheduled during the day. This is my 3rd year at Oak Hill, for those of you who do not know. There also was not a formal process for us to review data in the grade level meetings, and there was no continuous learning combined with data analysis. So as a school, we are committed to our guiding principles of shared responsibility and focusing on solutions. We decided to move our data team meetings after school, once a week, where we could all be together to grow and learn in our capacity as educators. We shifted to PLCs, where our focus weekly is on answering questions: what do we want the students to learn? How will we know if they've learned it? What will we do if they didn't learn it? And what will we do if they already know it? We now have a formal data cycle document that grade levels fill out to analyze data in both math and ELA to answer the PLC questions, and they have to create action plans to meet their goals. We share out, collaborate, and problem solve as a school community rather than in isolated grade levels. I touched on PLCs as helping us with the guiding principle of shared responsibility, but another strategy that we implemented was collaborative database problem solving through the development of our grade level goals. As a school team, we took several weeks at the beginning of the school year analyzing iLearn and NWEA data to identify our most significant areas of concern for grades K through 5. You can see a screenshot that shows an example of a 3rd grade standard that was analyzed and noted to be an area where improvement is needed. Every teacher analyzed each grade level standard. They worked in mixed grade level teams. Then grade level teams took the analysis that was completed and wrote grade level goals along with action steps, as well as when their check-in for their data cycle will occur. The grade level goals were also aligned to priority standards to ensure we are getting the most bang for our buck. I would also like to highlight that the ELA data has also been addressed through district initiatives with Mr. Deal's support. We're writing new ELA curriculum maps, and we are looking to implement new writing resources for the upcoming school year. Another strategy we implemented this year was to learn more about instructional practices and programs that are demonstrated to have the biggest impact on student achievement. We did this by diving into the work of John Hattie. John Hattie developed a way of synthesizing various influences in different meta-analysis according to their effect size. In his groundbreaking study, Visible Learning, he ranked 138 influences that are related to learning outcomes, from very positive effects to very negative effects. He found that the average effect size of all interventions he studied was 0.40. Therefore, he decided to judge the success of influences relative to this hinge point in order to find an answer to the question, what works best in education? We used his analysis to review practices we are currently using that have desired effects, as well as practices we currently do that are shown to not have an impact or even negative impact. We then identified practices that have the highest impact that we are not doing, but we wanted to learn more about. Teachers worked in teams to research these strategies and present to their peers on what they learned as well as how to consider implementing into their classrooms. One thing we really focused on this year was collective teacher efficacy. Goals build on one another to support the whole child's learning. We know that focusing on a shared goal almost always results in some kind of improvement. Teachers and staff that take a collective responsibility for improving student learning is the #1 influencer of student achievement, according to Hattie. Collective teacher efficacy is a staff's shared belief that through their collective action, they can positively influence student outcomes. According to Visible Learning research, collective teacher efficacy is more than 3 times as powerful and predictive of student achievement as socioeconomic status and has more than doubled the effect of prior achievement. In order to continue to develop this, we even had our specials teachers develop goals aligned with reading and math to support the academic learning of all of our students in grades K through 5. This means we are integrating academic goals into PE, music, and art. I am now going to hand it over to Mrs. Teresa Patravito to discuss our last school improvement goal.
Okay. The third area that we had identified as a school team as a needed goal for our school improvement plan was attendance. The line graph you see on the slide above is from the GPS dashboard. The percentages shown are determined through the number of students with at least 94% attendance rate divided by the total number of students enrolled in the school. 94% attendance rate is accomplished for students who miss less than 11 days of school in the year. In 2021, 79.5% of students had 94% or better attendance. And again, this figure includes students who were enrolled in our virtual academy. Last year, only 51% of students had 94% attendance or better. For our goal, we used the federal government data regarding the number of chronically absent students for the 2021-2022 school year. Last year, we had 30 students identified as chronically absent. As of February 1st, the current number of students that would be identified as chronically absent is only 16. This means we are on track to meet our goal of reducing the number of chronically absent students from 30 to 20. Oh, sorry. That would have been helpful. Here are some of the strategies that we are using to improve our attendance. We have implemented several things to improve our student attendance this year. One new strategy was to invite the parents of students who were habitually truant the previous year or on track to be so again this year to formally meet with our office team during the parent-teacher conference time this fall. During the conferences, we discussed targeted interventions along with individualized rewards for students to improve their attendance. We also implemented a school-wide attendance incentive, which you can see on the board there. Classes that with 100% attendance students on any given day receive a letter to spell out the word attendance. Once the entire word is spelled out, the class earns free time in the gym. The bulletin board allows everyone to view each other's progress as well as create some healthy competition. We have also had individual student meetings to identify some root causes of attendance issues. This helps us when we are creating multi-tiered systems of support plans for students. On the next slide, I'd like to discuss a positive school culture. A positive learning and growth can only take place in a positive environment. A healthy school culture will affect students and staff success more than any other reform or intervention. In order to meet our school improvement goals, we know that it will take more than just implementing highly effective instructional practices, curriculum, and interventions. This year, we have really put forth a lot of effort to bringing back some of the activities, events, and programs that build up a positive school climate and culture. Listed on the screen above are just some of the ways that we have promoted a positive school environment this year. PBIS initiatives. A positive school culture begins with a strong PBIS foundation. PBIS stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. And this is the basis for all of our behavioral expectations in all settings within our school. We have built-in opportunities to model and practice these expectations throughout the school year, starting with a school-wide kickoff at the very beginning of the school year, and then a refresher event right after winter break. To motivate and reward positive behaviors, we have several initiatives in place. Students can earn Cardinal Cash and can shop at our Cardinal Cash store weekly. This year, we developed a student leadership opportunity by allowing the 5th grade students to operate that store. At the Cardinal Cash store, some of the most coveted things that students can purchase are special experiences, like doing the morning announcements, eating lunch, or being an assistant to a teacher or staff member of your choice. And probably the most popular is getting to be guest principal for the day, or new this year, deputy student resource officer. So you see some of those opportunities up on the screen. The outstanding Cardinal Breakfast and Something to Chirp About Wall of Fame are other programs that we have continued as ways to recognize various students for being role models of exemplary behavior. Family engagement. We know that increasing student success is only possible through uniting with our families and working together. Therefore, throughout this school year, we have created meaningful opportunities and activities that allow families to engage in their students' learning and foster relationships with us here at the school. We want our school to feel like home not only to our students, but to their families as well. Some of the photos above show snapshots of what this family involvement has looked like this year. Popsicle Playdate is an opportunity for all new students to come learn about the school and meet some of our staff, an informal and fun setting before school even begins. We held a monster march before Halloween so that students could parade around the school showing off their costumes to family and friends. Reverse caroling was a new event this year that took place in December. For this event, family members were invited on a guided tour throughout the school while being treated to Christmas carols sang by each grade level. This spring, we took part in our first One School, One Book event. Every student and staff member participated in reading the same chapter book, along with extended learning activities both in the classroom and at home. Throughout the year, we encourage parents to come and volunteer in a variety of ways. Lastly, we are fortunate to have an amazing parent-teacher organization that has facilitated several events for students and families, like movie nights, mother-son and daddy-daughter events, and the above-pictured Bingo for Books. And now I'm going to invite Mrs. Bird to share more of the wonderful things we are doing at Oak Hill.
So in addition to all of the amazing instructional practices and changes we've been making to those things to help meet our school improvement goals, we also want to build that safe and positive environment as well. And we also want to instill in our students the ability to help others. So we are very grateful for the ability to not only serve our students and our families, but also create opportunities throughout the year for our students to serve each other and beyond. The above lists are just a few ways that we've engaged our students in service to others this year. We strive to teach them that being a citizen of the community means contributing toward the betterment of all. Peer mentoring is a program offered to our 5th grade students that have proven to be role models among their peers. They get to work weekly in our life skills classes along with our kindergarten classes in a variety of ways. This program has proven to be beneficial in many ways. Our students grow personally throughout their interactions, and the other students around them are motivated to participate and look for ways that they can show their leadership and positive character as well. Our student council has facilitated several donation drives to support some local community and statewide organizations that give back to others. Specifically, the Community Help Network, which our corporation has a partnership with. They provide some of our families with buddy bags. These are bags filled with extra snack and food items for the weekends. These are provided to a group of students every Friday. Lastly, in connection with the One School, One Book program that we just completed, our school participated in a fundraiser for Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation for Childhood Cancer. We raised over $3,000 in 4 days, which far surpassed our goal. It is so important that each of our students engage in acts of service and generosity, and they experience the feeling of doing good for others. The other element that I would like to address is our social emotional learning and behavioral health. Mental health needs among youth have been steadily increasing for some time, but the pandemic and its effects have made that need more obvious than ever. Did you know that even prior to the pandemic, the CDC found that 1 out of 5 children had a mental disorder, but only 20% received treatment? Using those numbers at our school would equate to 111 students with a mental disorder and 89 children left untreated. 89 children. That is a little over 3 classrooms and would represent about 16% of our total enrollment. Furthermore, the average amount of time between the onset of mental disorder symptoms and intervention is 10 years. This puts schools in a unique position to be the first responders to mental health issues and gives us the ability to intervene early if we have the resources. Using the multi-tiered systems of support framework, we provide Tier 1 social emotional education as a proactive strategy to reduce the number of students who would need more intensive services. As you can see, our Tier 1 social emotional supports are numerous. We use a research-based SEL curriculum called Second Step in the classrooms where students learn about growth mindset, emotion management, empathy and kindness, and problem solving. I visit each class on a monthly basis to enrich these lessons, and each classroom has an area where students can go when they are feeling dysregulated and struggling to learn. This is called the Calming Corner. The newest way Oak Hill is providing this important Tier 1 strategy is by offering an emotion management room that we call the Nest. The purpose of our Nest is to have a separate space where students can learn and most importantly practice self-regulation skills with the guidance of our behavior assistant, John Sipkar. To date, there have been over 530 visits to the Nest since its opening in late September. This innovative design empowers the student's ability to recognize how their emotional state is impacting their ability to learn and empowers them to advocate for their needs. When a student visits the Nest, they are met by a caring individual who guides them through a variety of regulation strategies, offers empathy, and encourages them to use the strategies they've learned when facing future challenges. Tiers 2 and 3 are reserved for smaller groups of students who are still in need of support after Tier 1 interventions. In the past, this was an area in need of improvement and has greatly improved this year due to our partnership with Behavioral Specialists of Indiana, also known as BSI. One of the most powerful ways in which BSI has assisted our school is by providing consultation to our teachers and assistants, which has enhanced their understanding of how to manage students with challenging behaviors that are often the result of mental illnesses. Our teachers have absolutely loved collaborating with BSI this year, and we've seen amazing progress with the students who have been working with them. When teachers have these tools, they can spend more time on academic instruction, which will help drive improvement to those school improvement goals, and less time managing challenging behaviors. In addition to the consultation they provide, BSI therapists also offer stand tray therapy, group music therapy, and individual therapy focused on behavioral issues. These services have been instrumental in helping our most at-risk students since our heavily populated county has overwhelmed the mental health services available in our region. I often hear from parents when they are calling agencies looking for counseling that they are being told it's going to be a few months until someone can see their child. So being able to connect families with these resources means that we can intervene much sooner than that average of 10 years that I mentioned earlier. And finally, to highlight some of our amazing extracurriculars, we are very proud to offer a wide selection of extracurricular activities that foster our students' individual talents and personalities. This also increases the pride they have in themselves as a representation of our school. Each year, our teams and clubs celebrate various successes, and as a school, we come together to show our support for them by conducting a pom-pom parade. This happens through our building prior to any big competitive event. We would like to take a moment to highlight our Science Bowl team now for their achievements. This year, they finished 4th in state.
And we have a video. We were unable to invite the kids here. Well, it's probably their bedtime, but they have a lot of spring activities and spring sports and things. So trying to get them all here was a little challenging, but Mrs. Amanda Montez, who is one of the coaches, put together a video. There are some Science Bowl questions, but due to time, I'm not going to pause and have you guys answer them, but you think if you could.
Oak Hill Science Bowl team began during the 2015 to 2016 school year. Since then, our team has achieved many great accomplishments. Within the 7 years, we have placed in the top 10 in the state 5 times. This past year, we placed 4th in the state for our division. The students on the team met twice a week to study 5th through 7th grade science topics. This year's topic was physics. Students completed experiments, virtual simulations, and lessons to learn more about potential and kinetic energy and different energy transformations. Let's meet the students on the Oak Hill team.
Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm Peter Fred. I'm Amelia Orisek. I'm Jackson Denton. I'm Benjamin O. Jackson Denton. My name is Mason Rosie. My name is Alexandria. My name is Katie Richardson. My name is Rosie.
To show the school board members some of the content that the students studied this season, we want you to play along. Can you answer some of the Science Bowl questions?
The formula for kinetic energy is half the mass times velocity squared, or times velocity times velocity. Yes, because half 5 equals 10. Yes, 10. Yes, that's 10. Yeah. It is electrical energy or mechanical. Yeah, because the blades are moving. Yes. Yeah. And same thing with the kitchen blender. And the thing is, yes. So, it's very true. Yes, the hair dryer is electrical energy. Hair dryer is just normal. Yeah. We are going 10 years, and the force is to great kids, and the work is yes. So we multiply 210, and we get 2,000. So the answer would
We hope you had fun, and we look forward to another great season next year.
So I don't know about you, but when I listen to these 4th and 5th graders and they are talking about science, it actually goes over my head sometimes. So it's amazing to see. But overall, we are so proud of our school and all the things that we do. Even today, we did our disability awareness program, and our entire special education staff comes together, and the kids rotate through stations, and they just learn about what life is like. And one of our parents came to discuss her physical disability. We're always student-centered. That's what we do, and we're very proud. So do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer.
I love it.
Presentation, very enlightening.
Love everything you guys are doing there, for sure.
Thank you so much. But if you ever want to stop by, come on in. We would welcome you. Have a wonderful
Honorary cardinal for the day.
Everyone's an honorary cardinal.
I don't know, I was a tiger, so.
I was just gonna say, that's okay. I started out a bear, and now I'm a cardinal. So.
My kids are tigers too, yeah.
So I went to school at the original Oak Hill, but then I taught at 3 Creeks, and now I'm back at Oak Hill. So I just feel like
I did go to Oak Hill. Wasn't Oak Hill a high ability school? Like
Yes.
I did go to Oak Hill.
Yeah,
for
that was, so my son's class was the last class to go through in that self-contained high ability
Yeah.
before we switched to the cluster model,
Oh,
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
It
you
was
guys
a long
so
time
much.
ago. Thank
Have a
you,
wonderful
guys.
Weekend, spring break. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on through to F, which is our superintendent report.
Yeah, so I'd like to start off tonight with Mr. Becker, who's got some solar information to share with us.
The NSLGI. All right. Okay, so, good evening, by the way. Dan asked me to put together a little bit of an update in terms of how our solar program is going, and I wanted to give you some kind of realizations of what we thought was going to happen as we were putting these solar panels in. You'll see a little bit about that in a second. For those who weren't aware, we currently have solar 6,604 solar panels in Tri-Creek School Corporation, split amongst 4 different sites, 5 different sites actually. We started our solar journey in 2017. We did have a little bit of solar going at the transportation center before that, but we really hit our big strides in 2017. Toward the end of 2017 is when the elementary schools came online, and then into 2018 is when you started seeing the middle school, and then eventually the RET building in there as well. And you can see how many solar panels we have in each of the buildings. Obviously, the middle school's array is by far the biggest one, and also our biggest impact on our energy savings. So the question always is, that I always get from people is, well, how much money are we actually saving from these solar panels? What's the impact? So the first thing that we had to consider is, well, there's 2 different ways to save. You're saving money, and you're also saving electricity, you're saving energy. So we want to take a look at the both. And usually you can kind of see a correlation between the two. If you're saving 10% of your electricity use, you're probably going to save around 10% of your electricity costs. And so we'll take a look at a little bit of that. So this graph represents our electricity costs over the course of the entire solar program that we have. So you see back in 200, I always put in the baseline as the year before solar. So 2016 is our year before solar, and we're looking at about $770, I don't know how well you can see that there, about $776,000 spent on electricity. And this is district-wide, so everything that we've got. Then you see 2017 is when we start actually working in solar. We actually went up, because really 2017 was pretty much over by the time we got to turning on those solar panels. When you get to turn on your solar panels in August and September, you're already in the waning sunlight part of the year, and you're not going to generate a ton of electricity. We trended a little bit, but not enough to see any kind of savings. We saw the savings starting in 2018 with a big drop down to $557,000 in electricity. 2019 obviously saw even more. 2020 we're not even really going to look at too much, because that's when basically the whole district shut down. Obviously we're going to save some money there. We were able to turn a lot of stuff off. But then 2021, we were back at it. We were down, or we were saving about $525. Again, all compared to 2016. So saving about spending about $525,000, and then spending about $597,000 last year in 2022. So the green parts of your graph are what we're spending, and the orange represents the savings compared to 2016. Now you can see that obviously as we went from 2018, 2019, and especially 2020, that savings gets bigger and bigger. But we're also now seeing that saving is dwindling a little bit as we're going on. You'll see a little bit about why that is in a second. When I show this graph to people, they'll often say, well, you're obviously spending more money because you're using more electricity. Well, to some extent that's true. So let's take a look at our electricity use over that same amount of time. So this graph represents kilowatt hours of electricity that we've used. Back in 2016, pre-solar, we're using 5.7 million kilowatt hours of electricity district-wide. So we take that, compare it to our years from there, we get all the way down again in 2020 to 2.7 million kilowatt hours of electricity. Obviously, shutting down the buildings for 3 months is going to save you quite a bit of electricity. But as you can see here, we did bump up, and we're, again, in that high 3 million area in terms of kilowatt hour usage, whether it's pre-COVID at 2018, or even after COVID in 2021-22. What you notice, again, our green graph shows what we're using, the orange represents what we're saving. You'll notice that, well, maybe you can't tell as much from this graph, but that gap, that saving that you have here actually is a little bit bigger than what we saw in the costs. So what I wanted to do is put the two of them side by side. Let's take a look at our savings for cost and our savings in electricity use. And that's what this graph represents. So this is our percent savings each of the years in both use, which is in green, and our cost, which is in orange. Now again, we're talking about saving energy, we're talking about saving money. So if we're saving 15%, or saving our use of electricity is down 15%, you would think that our cost for electricity would be down 15%. And you do see a little bit about that, or a little bit of that, both in 2018, 2019, and 2020. Our savings are roughly about the same. But starting in 2021, we start seeing a little bit of a gap. Our savings in electricity, or use of electricity, is 38.4% compared to 2016. But our cost savings was only 32.4%. So we're starting to see a gap. And then in 2022, it was very obvious. We actually had about the same amount of savings compared to 2016 in our energy use, our electricity use, but our cost savings was down. And that's nothing that we're doing what we can. We're not using the electricity. And that's the best way that we can, the best way that we have to save money. But we're paying a little bit more. And that's purely because NIPSCO's rates are going up as we speak. Not only have they gone up once, but I think they even have another rate increase that's on the books, the DLGF, not the DLGF, the IURC, Indiana Rate of the Utility Regulatory Committee. So we can expect kind of to see that same kind of trend happening where we'll stick around because we're committed to solar or to energy savings. We'll stick around this area here in terms of energy savings, electricity savings, in the 20 to 40% range. But I can imagine that we're going to start seeing this gap widen and widen and widen. So we'll do our part in terms of saving electricity, but we're probably going to see less and less cost savings as NIPSCO raises their rates. So there's not much we can do about that. We still have to pay our NIPSCO bill. Contrary to popular belief, we cannot just run the building on solar alone. We have to be connected to the grid in order to do that. We do have, our star in terms of energy savings right now is the middle school. Since we turned the panels on at the middle school, we have not paid an electric bill, other than the $30 minimum fee that we have to pay. We have not paid an electric bill here. And we are increasing our solar credit. So as we generate electricity, we are spinning the meter backwards, selling it back to NIPSCO. So every time we generate more than we use, the meter spins backward and NIPSCO gives us a credit. Right now, our credit for the middle school is about 1.6 million kilowatt hours. So we could use 1.6 million kilowatt hours in this building without any solar or anything else and still not pay a bill for it. To give you an idea, we usually use about, in the summer, probably about 120,000 kilowatt hours. So we could pretty much run a full year of this building without paying a NIPSCO bill, and that's with no solar whatsoever. So, and we're just gonna generate more. Now it's March and we're gonna start generating more and more. And then summer break comes around and we shut the buildings down and we generate even more and more on top of that. So We are doing, and that's quite a bit of the savings that you see here is from this particular building. The elementaries help, but this building is the main producer. So while we do have we're still saving, don't get me wrong, we are not spending more than we did back in 2016. However, we're not saving as much as we did. I think we were, our max at one point, well, discontinuing 2020, I think we were about $260,000. Yeah, it was about $260,000 was our max savings. I think that was in 2019. And then this past year in 2022, we were right about 180,000 in terms of how much money we saved in solar through no fault of our own, using about the same amount of electricity. We're just not saving as much money because the rates are going. And that was kind of what we figured was going to happen over time too. So, any questions?
I have just a general question.
Mm-hmm.
Does the effectiveness of the solar panels go down based on longevity, number one, or maybe film on the glass? Is there maintenance that somebody, I couldn't imagine it, but
we have not seen any reduction in our solar production over time. I mean, obviously, if the sun's not out, we're not going to get any production.
Right.
But in terms of the minor stuff like that, we haven't seen any of that stuff. There is I want to say it was over the 30-year warranty or the 30-year lifespan, expected lifespan of the solar panels, they were expected to lose, 5% production or something like that. In that time.
For the 30 years.
For the 30 years, yeah.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah, and then we'll continue to keep them out there as long as they're doing something. And
with all the data that you collect, does it show the effectiveness rating, meaning like 99.7% effective?
I haven't looked at that part of it yet, so no. I mean, I'm sure we could figure it out at some point, but
yeah, and I'm not asking that you do that. I'm just asking.
Yeah, but that's something we could probably figure out over time.
All right.
The difficult part is if sunlight were consistent from one year to the next, it'd be easy to figure that out.
Right.
The problem is we just don't have that consistent sunshine. So this past December was horrendous in terms of solar production. So.
And John, we're thankfully on the net metering program.
Yes.
Whereas, what can schools do now?
So when we entered into our interconnection agreements with NIPSCO back in 2017, we took advantage of 30 years of net metering, which means that when we spin that meter backwards, when we sell electricity back to NIPSCO, we are paying as well. We're essentially getting credit at the same rate as what we're paying for electricity. So whether it's 19 cents per kilowatt hour or whatever it is, when we sell it back, they're giving us essentially 19 cents per kilowatt hour. Come last July of 2022, net metering was no longer required in the state of Indiana. And obviously the utilities then said, okay, no longer gonna do it then. And so they no longer offer net metering. They offer what's called excess generated distribution. So now you're gonna pay 19 cents per kilowatt hour to buy electricity, but when you sell it back, you're paying, I think it was 8 cents per kilowatt hour, something like that. So it's pennies on the dollar.
So adding on, not really a benefit, and we really can't in our district except for over at the high school unless we wanted to do that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this building is maxed out in terms of solar, so this whole campus runs off of one electric meter, and you can only generate 1 megawatt of electricity per meter, and we're right about there here. The other buildings we could add on, but the cost that it's going to take longer to get a return on investment because we're only getting pennies on the dollar back if we're sending that electricity back to NIPSCO. We're going to pay off these solar panels in record time because of the amount that we're over generating and able to save in our electric bills. Whereas if we had to pay, if they were paying us 8 cents for every 19 cents that we pay, it would just take almost double the time to pay them off. So.
I do have a question, but I have to say, this just took me back to the high school.
Algebra?
Yes, and I didn't have you, but you were next to one of my classes, and I just feel like you haven't missed a beat. So
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I had him for algebra, and I was like, wow, this.
Right here, right
yeah, and that same excitement you brought to the classroom. You got it. You must miss these presentations a little.
Yeah.
Sitting out there by yourself with the bus barn, but I was going to ask you. Almost answered it, but so we bought these panels. We didn't get grants or things like that, or did we?
We had one grant. Our original We have 90 panels originally that were directly, they were connected to the transportation center to start off as a pilot program. That was about $64,000, I believe, that the board invested in that and said, let's give it a try. This was as a result of having a student presentation here. And I love this story, and I know many of you have heard this and heard me tell this story over and over again, but it was my second board meeting in this district, and we had these wonderful 8th grade students present their alternative energy to the board. And I'm sitting there just like, ooh, this is a great new board meeting, you know, and these kids are presenting so well, and then all of a sudden I heard the board president go, and figure it out, Dana, and I went, what? We're gonna be, okay, so we're gonna be looking into alternative energy. So these students did this wonderful program, you know, presentation on wind turbines to, you know, biomass to solar. So we spent the next year, Nate was part of that crew where we did the tour from Indy to, you know, up north and all around to look at what was the best fit for us. We settled on solar. We started it with that pilot program, tested it for a year, went, yeah, this is working. It seems like we're getting the numbers. We checked the data, the students were part of that. We secured a $100,000 grant to do an expansion of that from the Office of Energy Development, which we added another 100 and I think it was 20 panels out there, something like that.
108.
Yeah, 108 panels to that system. By then, in another year's time, the board was really convinced and said, this needs to happen. So we expanded the 3 elementaries, the middle school here. The investment was around $3.4 million to install all of that and get that out. We had a heck of a time because that was when net metering was changing in Indiana. They were going from the 30-year agreements, and if you didn't have your solar systems substantially complete by December 31st of that year, then you were subject to the 15-year net metering. We were having some trouble getting our stuff. So it was a real nail biter, but we were able to be, I'd probably say we're probably one of the last school districts that got that 30-year net meter that year before they changed it to 15. So it came about that way.
Wow, we had a Hall of Fame for that 8th grade class.
It was really cool because they brought those 8th graders back who were seniors at that time, right? To the dedication of the, you know, the 4 school solar array dedications. That was really nice to have those kids come out there.
That's cool.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah,
problem.
thank
Thank you,
you.
And then the only other item that I have is aligning with our vision statement of well-rounded educational experiences. Our 7th and 8th grade band and our 7th and 8th grade choir recently participated in the Indiana School Music Association contest at Wilbur Wright in Munster, and they received silver ratings, and our 6th grade band and 6th grade choir received gold ratings, as well as our Nifty Notes. So just congratulations to our middle school performing arts departments and our Nifty Notes.
That's awesome. Congrats. I know my 6th grader was there with band and my 8th grader as well. So they were happy and said that it went well. All right, staff recognition.
Yeah, I have one here going old school. This was Rebecca Anderson, in Oak Hill Elementary School. And she is a teacher assistant, and teacher Robin Lachinsky indicated that Mrs. Anderson is an outstanding assistant. She is highly organized and keeps track of student data. She is always able to quickly identify students in need academically or emotionally and problem solve in the moment without disrupting my lessons or other students. Many students have reported that Mrs. Anderson has helped them improve their math skills, showed sympathy, taught them coping skills during stressful situations, and even helped them communicate effectively with friends. She has proposed changes to our school schedules when conflicts occur and makes great suggestions to improve reading group schedules within our classroom. I rest easy when I'm out of the classroom knowing that my students are in good hands. Our classroom runs smoothly with the help and support of Mrs. Rebecca Anderson, Oak Hill teacher assistant.
Awesome. Yes. All right, how about board member reports? We're good there then. All right, moving on to regular business consent items. Approve the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, March 9th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
We should have public hearing.
You guys are gonna get to approve everything tonight. All right, personnel. Approve the personnel report dated Thursday, March 23rd, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel report.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Board policy.
Yeah, so on the screen here are the revisions that we went through 2 weeks ago at our meeting, and this is the second reading. There have been no changes to the philosophy, which entails the mission, vision, and guiding principles. These 3 areas were adopted as part of the strategic plan, and so updating this board policy will bring alignment to the strategic plan. And so with the second reading, it also clears the hurdle to a recommendation for adoption.
I'll go ahead and make a motion for the second reading and adoption of the revisions to board policy 123.
I'll second.
Alva? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. All right, business operations. Report of State Board of Accounts audit ending June 30, 2022. Where? It's not on my thing. Oh, I'm sorry. I have the second one. My bad. Staying with board policy. It's getting late, guys. Second reading and adoption of revisions to board policy 0167.3, public participation at board meetings.
Yeah, so we made some corrections and adjustments at the last one.
It's really hard to read up there.
And it is not jumping out.
That was the last one. I think that we changed.
You are correct.
Yeah, that was the language of the last one.
Yeah, so just so that we, yes. We made sure that we put email addresses, telephone, and attendance at the meetings.
Okay.
Sorry, I meant to highlight that when we went through that. So there were no changes on this second one. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. It must have met your approval in the second reading.
It did.
I wasn't here last time.
I'm glad you caught that.
All right. Do I have a motion to adopt?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of board policy 167.3.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Passes. Now we can move on to business operations. Report of State Board of Accounts audit ending June 30, 2022.
Yes, so we have the pleasure of being selected for audit. I received notification while sitting at the school finance seminar on December 15th that we were selected. We have a biannual audit every 2 years. So we were audited up to June 30th, 2020. And so we were due for our July 1st through June 30th, 2022. We were selected for a virtual audit, which is a first timer for me. Never had a virtual audit before and didn't know what to expect at all. Used to having auditors in-house. They're working with us for 2 to 3 months usually, taking over our office, popping in, asking us for stuff, inspecting stuff. So this was a new experience for our team here. We started on January 17th.
My gosh.
Yes, you know what was going on and all this, and we finished 3.5 weeks later. on September 9th, or on September 9th, oh my gosh, it's getting late, on February 9th. So 3.5 weeks, so that's our first record in this audit, that we had a 3.5 week audit. That's never happened before. Our exit was on March 10th. And again, the other record was first time virtual. I asked the audit team, which was Crow Horvath today, how many have you had fully complete a virtual audit without having to come on site? And she said that she's been doing this now for 2 years, and she's only had 2 schools go completely virtual, and we're one of those.
Wow.
So that's good. We were able to fully submit everything 100% through their portal, which meant a lot of scanning, a lot of digging, a lot of explaining, a lot, through email, like that kind of stuff, which is usually done face-to-face when you can show and explain. So tedious and lots of time, let me say, put in here by the team in the business department to make this happen. It was a lot of work. I took a look back and just wanted to see, because I was curious, and we inherited the audits. They were behind when I first started here in 2013, so we inherited the findings from the previous year. So going back from 2010-2012 school year, they had, at that time, we had 16 findings on that audit report. The following school year, 2012-2014, I only had 6 months of work on that one under my tenure here. We went down to 10 findings in that time. 2014-2016, down to 8. 2016-2018, down to 3. 18-22, and this last audit here, I'm going to say it's 2 with a parentheses, actually only 1 audit comment on here, because I will own one of these from our department, which is a standard one that they will definitely always find for you about internal controls and just not having enough checks and balances. And actually, I really could have, I know this one could have been corrected had we not been on the system that we were. We made a transition in our financial system, and this was a result of the accrual-based system and converting some of their reports and not actually reporting some liabilities that were on there that you standardly wouldn't deal with in a cash-based system. The other audit finding was due to NYSEC. It was a NYSEC audit, and that's why the parentheses, because it's really not Tri-Creek. It's just the management of their grant systems there that caused an audit finding on not only ours, but every school within there. It's already been corrected as well. So that the 2 findings that we have were corrected within, just outside of the audit cycle. So it was a really good audit. I'm very happy and very pleased with the way the business office has been handling things. So that's my report. If you have any questions.
Thank you.
Job.
Yes.
I love the decreasing numbers.
Isn't it? Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to number 2, which is approve the purchase of 4 78-passenger Thomas-built school buses from Curlin Bus Sales of Silver Lake, Indiana.
To answer Sean's question from earlier, and I just did the math, school buses are about $129,000. So, and to answer Dana's question, let me bring that up really quick. In January of 2021, we paid $16,000 for a load of fuel, which is 7,000 gallons. February of 2023, so the last purchase that we just made was $22,900.73. So there's quite a bit. We paid $3.27 per gallon in that last purchase. And by the way, we just got fuel the other day, so we'll be getting a new bill here pretty soon. With your permission, I'd like to order 4 78-passenger Thomas-built school buses from Curlin Bus Sales in Silver Lake, Indiana. These buses match the specs that we've been getting for our buses for the last few years. We are going with the Cummins engine again, which we've had very, very good success with. And we are, and all of the other bells and whistles that we have on our buses, cameras come with that, 2-way radios, GPS, all the things that we expect on our buses. We are $129,907 is the base price for the bus, but they did offer us $7,000 per bus in trade-in values. So we'll be trading in buses 9, 32, 52, and 53. And they will obviously give us 7,000. The market for used buses is fairly good right now because the lead time for a diesel bus is running about 18 months. So people want buses quicker than that. We might even be able to get more than $7,000 from Hanover right now because they're really looking for buses.
It sounds like a used car salesman.
Yeah.
Let's find out. Maybe the next round. So, yeah. So the total value or the total amount of the purchase order would end up being $491,628.
Sounds like a lot, but it's really not.
No. Nope.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the purchase of the 4 78-passenger Thomas-built school buses?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the 4 buses.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much. Number 3, approve the Tri-Creek School Corporation Food Service Management Company renewal with Chartwell School Dining for the 23-24 school year.
This is the second of 4 renewals that we can go for under this contract, which originated on July 1st, 2021. The contract or the renewal request here before you includes a 7% increase, which allowable by the contract and by state standards, they could have gone up to the total CPI, which was 8.3. So they're only asking for the 7 versus the 8.3, which I am happy they didn't go for the full amount in today's day and age. So that includes increases to the management fee, the administrative fee only, and the current equivalent meal factor will stay the same, which is what we have. So I recommend approving.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the food.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 4, approve the overnight study trip for Lowell High School precision machining and welding students to participate in the Skills USA State Final Competition at the Indiana State Fairgrounds in Indianapolis, Indiana from April 14th through 15th, 2023.
How could we say no to that?
Right? That's pretty
I make a
awesome.
motion to approve the overnight study trip.
I second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, can we do the consent? Okay, perfect. All right, consent items. I'm going to read all of them and then we will make one motion. Accept the grant from the Gene Haas Foundation in the amount of $12,000 to be used to support the Lowell High School CNC and manufacturing program, student scholarships, and student competition teams. And number 2, accept the donation from the Lowell Lions Club in the amount of $1,150 to help fund the Lowell High School Pride Banquet. Number 3, accept the donation from the Lowell United Methodist Church in the form of various clothing items for use by the nurse at Lake Prairie Elementary School when students need a change of clothing. Number 4, accept the donation from Bale Master of Crown Point, Indiana in the form of materials valued at approximately $1,200 for the use in the RDT programs. Number 5, accept the donation from Tammy Conover of Lowell, Indiana in the amount of $20 to help offset negative student meal charges at Lowell Middle School. Number 6, accept the donation from Jessica Plant of Lowell, Indiana in the form of a Black & Decker digital convection oven valued at $100 for use in the Lake Prairie Elementary School faculty and staff lounge. Number 7, accept the donation from Mr. and Mrs. Anthony Blank of Lowell, Indiana in the amount of $10 for a basket for the Lowell High School L Club Special Olympics Night at the Pit basketball game. Number 8, accept the donation from Catherine Hedges in the form of electrophoresis equipment and supplies valued at approximately $500 to help support the Lowell High School Biomed Department. Number 9, accept the donation from Global Learning Accelerator, Inc. of Kansas City, Missouri in the amount of $1,500 to help support the Lowell High School Precision Manufacturing class. Number 10, accept the donation from the Lowell High School Live, Love, Give Scholarship in the amount of $500 to help fund the Lowell High School L Club Special Needs Basketball Game. Number 11, accept the donation from the Lake Prairie Elementary School PTO in the amount of $1,151.80 to purchase glow shirts for Lake Prairie students. And our last one, number 12, accept the donation from the Lake Prairie Elementary School PTO in the form of a standing desk valued at $150 for use in the Lake Prairie office.
I will make a motion to accept all 12 donations.
A second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you to everyone who donated. It's a lot of great stuff. All right, public participation number 2, which is not related to agenda items. We have no one interested in participating in public comment this evening, so we will move on to our other information. The next meeting of the Tri-Creek School Board of Trustees is scheduled for Thursday, April 13th, 2023. Spring break is scheduled for Monday, March 27 through Friday, March 31st of 2023. Students return to school on Monday, April 3rd, 2023, and students and staff will then have Friday, April 7th, 2023 off in observance of Good Friday. To note, school calendar previously showed Monday, April 10th as a flex school day. This flex day will be used to make up the school cancellation day that took place on Friday, March 3rd. Therefore, Monday, April 10th will be a regular school day for all staff and students. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? All right, I want to thank everyone who hung out with us tonight and those who stuck it out and watched at home. Meeting adjourned.